Hello and welcome back to Just One More Thing, a podcast about knitting and crafting. I'm your host, Janessa, and it's been a very busy couple of weeks. While I have FOs to talk about, I don't have FOs to share because I've sent them on their merry way. They're off to various parts, and uh, I've shown them enough in the past episodes that if you really want to see them up close on camera, you can. I also posted lots of pictures on Instagram, so you can see them. They're around. They're just not here with me personally. And the good thing about having FOs is that I also have new things that I cast on, so I have new projects to talk about, and I think I'm even going to dig in to my whip pile, deep into the whip pile, and get something out and work on some projects that have kind of been long neglected. But anyway, I guess we'll just kind of jump right into knitting, and then I'll get to various life stuff maybe at the end if you want to stick around and listen to any of that. So, first big news is that the tree line shawl, here's this was the one, it's not the official sample, but it's the one that I knit out of stash yarn to make sure that everything worked, it was my own test knit. It is now live on Ravelry. Dun, dun, dun. It's a really fun, easy to knit shawl. Actually a lot easier than you might think. The lace is very, very simple. Most of the pattern is just garter stitch. If you can do a decrease, you can do this pattern. It's really, that's maybe the most non-traditional stitch that you'll encounter, is that on the right sides you do a knit 3 together and a slip 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 knit, so you're decreasing 2 stitches on the right, and then on the back it's just regular decreases. The lace is just regular decreases and yarn overs. Maybe the most arduous part, is that the word that I want to use? That's a really fancy word. Arduous. The hardest part that you're going to come across in this pattern is the number of stitches that you have to cast on at the beginning, because it is a lot of stitches. If you think about working a traditional shawl and the number of stitches that you bind off at the end, sometimes I can be oh, I have to bind off all of these stitches, and it's a lot. I'm not gonna try to get around that fact. It's a lot of stitches right up front. But if you can get through that cast on, every row gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, few of your stitches. So really, by the time you get to this garter stitch section, you're just flying. And you put on a really good bingeable TV show, and before you know it, you've got a shawl. And when you bind off, you may have to cast on 1,000,000 stitches, but when you bind off, you're binding off 8 stitches. So it's super, super easy and quick. I'm a pretty average-ish knitter speed-wise. And when I knit the sample up, I knit that in, it was 3 days, but it was more 40 hours, when it was all said and done, time-wise. It was a small amount of time. So, about 3 days to knit the large size. I knit the small size in a day and a half of knitting. So I think it's a really quick knit, one that would be really good for Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday, and maybe you can't get one knit by Sunday at this point, but you could probably be take mom shopping for yarn and knit it up for her, and she would have it within the week. Definitely a quick knit in my books anyway. So it's live on Ravelry. You can go check it out. And I'd love to see the yarns and things that you knit with it. If you're going to be, it was a shawl that I did in collaboration with Dragon Horde Yarn. And so she has some really fun Outlander colorways that she dyed up for the shawl. And if you're going to be like a SSK or any of her different like trunk shows throughout the summer, check it out, because the sample that I knit for the pattern that's like in the photographs, I sent to her, and it's traveling around with her to all of her different trunk shows and things this summer. So you can check out the shawl live, like you can try it on and be like, oh yes, I do, I love this shawl, I'm going to knit it for myself. And then pick out some of her yarn, because she has some really fun speckles and tonals that work really well together. So I can actually show you, I do have a little bit of leftover yarn from that project. Let me find the other skein of it. Here we go. So the lace part I knit in, it was called Heirloom. And I don't know if this is going to focus. If I put my hand up, will it focus? There's some just very subtle splotches of, like you can just barely kind of see them there. Just little kind of splotches of plum, a little kind of rosy purple in there. Very, very, very subtle. So it's definitely a tonal that was Heirloom in her Lore sock base. And then the main speckle color was called, I've got to look at the tag because I can't. Je suis prêt, I think. Prêt? I'm not super great at French. I know it's je suis and then P-R-E-T is the color, is this colorway. And it was a really, it didn't really stripe, but it had bigger splotches, like bigger speckled splotches, like where the color would pool together really nice. And it's just lots of these really nice kind of like brownish, bluish, purple colors in there. So that's what was left over color-wise from doing the large shawl. So it doesn't quite use up 100. When I did this shawl, it used up all of the skein, but it didn't have quite the yardage that this was a little bit thinner yarn than this was. So you do have some leftovers to be able to, like, I don't know, make yourself a fun little cowl or something out of. There's probably enough yardage there for that. About mini skein size leftovers. When I did the small size shawl, I used basically like 2 minis worth of yarn for the lace, and then this is what I had left over for the main part of, like, the speckled part. So that one you could probably, if you could get like 2 minis of each color, you'd probably have enough to do the small size in the pattern. So kind of, you can kind of gauge accordingly. The small, like this one is a big kind of blankety throw over your shoulder shawl. The small one is definitely more of just like a bandana size scarf. So kind of, you know, size wise, and I put that size difference up on Instagram as well. If you're interested in seeing that, you can check it out. The other project I finished was the My Sister shawl that I was knitting for a friend, and let's see here. This is all I have left to show you. Is I have there's 2 balls of each color of yarn left over from her, like just little tiny scraps of yarn is all I have left to show you, because my husband took it to work today to give to his coworker. So I don't have that to show you, but it is definitely a shawl that you have seen on here before. Excuse me. I got it complete. It is on its way. And those were the two main things that I was knitting on while I was away from the podcast, was basically knitting up like the large test, the small test, and then like the main sample of the tree line shawl, and finishing off that my sister shawl for the lady who, it was like a commissioned knit that I was working on for her. So now that those things are off my plate, and then I took a day to like rest my wrists and my hands because that was kind of a marathon of knitting. I decided that the next thing I needed to cast on, the thing I really wanted to cast on was like just for me, but I was like, no, there's other things that people have asked for, that family members have asked for. I need to probably get those knit first. I need to work on those. So the thing that I've cast on yesterday, and I can talk about it pretty freely and show it because A, she asked for it specifically so she would know what she was getting, and B, I don't think she watches the podcast. I don't think my sister watches. Anyway, her 40th is coming up next month, and she had asked for a shawl when I posted. It was back in like December when I was doing my Make 9 2019 posts on Instagram. My Make 9 2018 had this shawl in it, and I kind of moved it forward because I didn't get it finished in 2018. I didn't even start it in 2018. But it has been on my bucket list for a really long time, so I wanted to kind of keep it there in my goals of knitting this thing. And that is the Leaves of Grass shawl. And because lace is very notoriously just blobbish until you block it out all nice and pretty, it's going to be hard to see, but I'm going to try to kind of stretch it out and show you. I've cast on and finished the first section, this kind of little star shape right here in the center. And then I have just now finished section B. There, we can kind of see that. I don't really know 100% what the motif is supposed to look like, but it's kind of that rose color, I think, that you kind of rose motif in there. Kind of like that. I just finished that section and am working on, like, I've done the increase round, and I'm going through and like knitting back across that increase round, and then we'll start in on section C. And there's a total of, I think it goes up to section E, is the knitted on border. So, you know, these first 3 or 4 sections always kind of go pretty fast, but then you get to that knitted on border and you have to like knit around 560 some stitches or something like that, and that's where it slows down. Pie shawls are really great until you get to the edging. You're like, oh, this is working up so fast. Oh, I'm such a quick knitter, and all of this done in no time. And then you get to that border, and like 8 weeks later, you're still slogging away. And you've only made it like a quarter of a way through the shawl, and you're like, it's never gonna get done. But the border doesn't look too bad, so maybe it'll go fast. It's not super intricate once you get to the border of this one. But yeah, I'm excited about it. It's kind of a fun knit. It's a really well written pattern. I've not knit too many things from Brooklyn Tweed. Jared Flood is the one who wrote this, I believe. And it's clear for me, but I don't know that it would be super clear for like a beginner or like a beginning lace pattern. I don't know that it would be appropriate for that. But if you have lace experience and you can read charts, I like how he laid out the pattern. It makes sense to me and it works well. So excited to be working on Leaves of Grass by Jared Flood. I'm showing you the wrong side, maybe. Nope, this is the right side. I had the right side showing. So there it is in semi-blocked form. Stretched out as much as I can. But I'm enjoying that knit. And then I think I'm going to dig back out my Joji Locatelli pattern. That's like this one. This is the starting point, and I think the other one is called I can't remember which pattern it is. Fading point. It's the one where you fade the colors. So I think I'm probably going to dig that one back out. Actually, I'm going to move this and see if it's like sitting right here. Do you see all my mess back here? Not that one. Where's my gloves? Here it is. So yeah, I think the next kind of thing that I'm going to dig out of my deep stash and work on, because it's pretty good car knitting. It's got a lot of garter stitch in it, which is good for car knitting for me anyway. I always have to be careful digging these out of deep stash because I never know how much the needles have moved, and like I would just end up pulling stuff off the needle. So yeah, I've made decent progress on these since I started them. I can't remember way back when I started them. Maybe this is the right side. Show you the side with the right stripes on it. So you knit this from either end into the middle is how the pattern works. And I basically have the two halves on one super long needle at the same time. And then I knit across both of them at once. It gets a little tricky when you get to the middle because you basically have to find you have to put one half on one needle and one half on another needle. And so it does get a little trickier at that point. You have to kind of finagle some things around. But as far as like knitting things, this is one that you would knit half and then you'd be like, oh, I just can't be bothered to cast on the second half. So you really have to be like, I'm just gonna knit them both at once. Either do them concurrently, like get through one section on this one and get through that same section on the second one, or I found doing them two at a time worked best for me. So I'm gonna dig this one out and start knitting on it like for my car knitting and stuff on our summer trips, because I have a big car trip coming up tomorrow. And then over Memorial Day, we have a big kind of adventure day with the kids. So that's lots of driving in the car. And then we have a trip over the 4th of July out to my mom's. And we have another trip to my dad's. So we have lots of car time in the summer. And I need projects that are mostly garter stitch that I don't have to look at. So otherwise I get sick in the car if I have to pay too much attention. So I can't work on like my lace project in the car, but I can definitely, this has some lace, but it's really simple. Like it's just those few rows. And it's really easy to kind of memorize it and do it without looking. I can't do that with, this is one I have to look at. This is one that I don't have to look at while I'm knitting it. So that's, sorry about that. So that's coming with me. I'm knitting this using, the name of the yarn is escaping me. I have the bands in here, I think, though. Yes, I do. Nerd String. I knew I had it somewhere. So I don't remember which color is which. But I'm using Nerd String in Mr. Green Sleeves. Power Food, Betamax, and What's this one? Half shallow. Shallow. 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought this was a 5 color. Oh, yes, I haven't caked this one up yet. And then the last one will be Busy Bee. So, like I said, I have no idea which. I know this one would be the half shallow, because that's the gray yellow color. I think this light green is the Power Food. I don't know which one the other ones are. It's been too long since I've done it. It's, if you go way back, go like 15, 20 episodes back or something like that. Maybe not that many. Maybe 10 or 15 episodes back. You'll see me like unbox the yarn and you can see it and know which color's which. But that's kind of it for me. The kids are going to be getting off of the bus soon, so I should probably go. Or else they'll want to come in here and tell you all about their shenanigans. Brooklyn's probably going to rush in the door and say hi and bye. She's got a sleepover with a friend tonight. So I think Emerson and I are going to go to town and eat dinner out as kind of a special little treat to give him something to look forward to instead of just staying. He doesn't like to be home. Brooklyn adores when he's not around. Like, they love each other. They get along. But she very much is like a I don't want to be around people person. She is much more happy, kind of enclosed with her drawings and her books and her own thoughts. Whereas Emerson is very much a, like, let's meet all of the people person. They clash in that way. And so, like, he always wants to be around and she's just like, I need my space. So he doesn't like it when she's not here, but he's not going to enjoy like having her gone for the evening. So to kind of make up for it, we're going to go out and eat dinner and have kind of just a fun mommy son buddy date or whatever you want to call it. So that's tonight. I do have to brag. I'm going to put a video at the end and you don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but it's my mom brag thing. And I have to be like, da, 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 da. You have to. Brooklyn had a competition of sorts yesterday. I say of sorts because she wasn't really competing against anyone. But her band, the 6th grade band, had 4 kids who were chosen to do solos this year, and she was one of them. And they were supposed to, I think they were supposed to like go somewhere for a competition, but then with all of our snow in the winter, it got canceled and they weren't going to reschedule it. And the band teacher felt bad, so she searched around to try and find someone who was qualified as a judge for that type of a competition to come to the school and listen to the 4 kids solos and rate them. And give them like what their rating would have been at competition, I'm guessing. I don't completely 100% understand how this process works. But anyway, so we went yesterday after school and she played her solo and she did really, really well. She's been practicing super hard on this solo and she got the highest. There was like 5 categories that they rated and she got the highest rating in each category. So we were really pumped about that. We were very excited and proud of her. And so I'm going to put that video at the end of the podcast and you can watch it if you want. But you don't have to if you don't want to. It's a 6th grader playing a flute and it's like a 2-minute little clip of that. Anyway, so we're winding down school. School gets out at the end of May. We're kind of gearing up for summer and we're very much in that, like, end of school year concerts and end of school year this and field trips. And we had a fun field trip the other day with Emerson. We went ice skating, and I posted about that on my Instagram stories, but they're no longer up and I didn't save them. So if you didn't catch them, I'm sorry, but they were fun, some fun, cute, ice skating pictures. Anyway, that's pretty much all that's been going on here. Lots and lots of knitting, gearing up to after I get a good amount done on that shawl for my sister. I've got a pat excuse me, a pattern that I'm working on that won't be out until the fall, but it's going to take a long time. I've got the hiccups. I should take a drink. That's just really watered down tea. I don't drink brown water. I just realized how that probably looked. It's just really watered down tea. Anyway, where was I? I can't remember, and so it probably wasn't important, and hopefully you don't mind not hearing the end of the story. Anyway, we will see you again in a couple of weeks, and until then, happy knitting!